These are apartments on the right-hand side of us. That big building there, they're apartments. And then you're going to see a bayou, which is not a canal. Now remember, a bayou is backwater off of a larger body of water with little or no current. This is Bayou St. John to the left and to the right. It's maybe 4 feet deep. Kayaking, canoeing, and fishing. Up ahead to the left is the military equestrian statue of Pierre Gustave Touton Beauregard. He was from Chalmette, Louisiana, became a West Point graduate. Behind him, you got the Voodoo Banner. We're going to have our 3-day, every Halloween, they have what they call a voodoo experience. All music and fun. Behind the banner, you'll see that tall building. That's the New Orleans Museum of Art. You'll see some more of it just as we get going here. You'll see more of the museum. You know, that museum, we have a lot of temporary artwork that comes and goes. We've had the King Tut exhibit. We've had the Russian Fabergé eggs. We've had the Monet paintings. See over to the left? And I do recommend that museum. If y'all have a chance to come on out, there it is to the left. Now, if you do come out there, there's something else you might want to do. On the left-hand side of the museum is a free self-guided walking tour called Sculpture Garden. Beautiful art sculpture there. But let's name some other things. In City Park, we have also 3 schools. There are 39 tennis courts. There are 17 baseball diamonds. There are 2 football stadiums. Let's see, 18-hole golf course. In the botanical gardens that's here, during the month of December, they're lit up with over 1.5 million lights. It's called Celebration in the Oaks. We do host a 10K race every year. And the last 2 years, there's been 2 marathons and 2 triathlons in this particular park. Now, this park does not get any money from the city, nor the parish, or the state. It's all funded by all these venues that go on throughout the year. That brings in the revenue to pay the employees, and also a lot of volunteers. And another thing that they did build here in City Park about a year and a half ago is the $10.7 million 9/11 Emergency Center. And we never had something like that in New Orleans, but we do now. And I'm going to show you later on, we have a brand new regional command center for transportation that focus on highways and freeways and roads and transportation. We'll see that later on. This is the bayou. This is the City Park on the left. If you look to the right, that tall building, that's the New Orleans, well, I should say the Louisiana State University School of Dentistry. Their main campus is upriver about 70 miles in Baton Rouge, but that's their school. Now, this is the Pan American Stadium on the left. High school football, soccer games, new lighting, new scoreboard, new bleachers. This is still City Park on the left, even though the freeway goes right through it. Along St. John Bayou, over to the right, you'll see the condominiums. Those are condos, very nice condos. I'm not sure how much they want for them, but just a nice area. You've got the park over here. You're near the French Quarter. Now, beyond this low-lying bridge, over to the right, on the other side, you might see an art sculpture. Looks like fans. It's called the Wonder Walls. The Wonder Walls was part of the entrance of the 1984 World's Fair. See way over there across the water? That's called the Wonder Walls. Now, these homes are in the $700,000 range. This area is called Park Island. Our former mayor, Ray Nagin, when he was our mayor, that's where he lived. He no longer lives here. Our current mayor is Mitch Landrieu. But I'm just saying it's a very exclusive, very nice area to live, called Park Island. Now, there's a new home being built on the right, the yellow one. I want to explain the word Cajun and also the word Creole. Cajun is a word given to the descendants, the French Canadian that were forced into exile against their will by the governor of England in 1755 up in Canada. The area is now called Nova Scotia. That means New Scotland. But the area at one time was called Acadia. Acadian, Acadiana, or French Canadian, who were farmers, fishermen, fur traders, trappers, shipbuilders, boat builders, etc. But in 1755, they were ordered to give up their Roman Catholic religion and pledge allegiance to the British crown. And many, of course, a few thousand refused, and many had come down to New Orleans. And about the time they arrived here, in fact, it was 8 years later, in 1763, there was a boat of 163 people, French Canadian, Acadian, 163, sailed upriver in 1763. Much to their amazement, if not shock, we are now being governed by the Spanish. They didn't want to be governed by the Spanish, so they didn't stay here. That's why you don't hear too much Cajun French spoken in the city of New Orleans, but you would in other parts of our state, because they settled on the backwoods, the bayous, with the Indians, and they speak a Cajun French language that's taught at birth, and they learn English as a second language, so they're bilingual. But if you hear the word Cajun, and that's a little brief history of their migration and what happened, what took place. Now, on the other hand, and by the way, this works hand in glove too. If you hear the word Creole, it comes from a Spanish word that means native born in the colonies. And if you were born in the colonies throughout the 1700s, you were speaking French or Spanish or both, and you were Catholic. That was pretty much the law of the land in Louisiana. There wasn't any other choice, you know. And so, who were the people that populated New Orleans in that era? Well, you had the French, Spanish, African, West Indian, Caribbean, Jamaican, Haitian, Cuban, South American, Honduran, Guatemalan. You know, France is one of France's wealthiest colonies was the West Indies up until 1796. Our first articles of law came from the Caribbean island. That was 1724. So that's why people, they travel through Louisiana and then they hear this history. They don't hear this history in other parts of America. And you got to remember that we had two governments, French and Spanish, and then of course we became a state in 1812. So I like to tell people that the more research I've done is that we really didn't start to become Americanized until after maybe the Civil War ended in 1865 because of our prior history. So you'll hear the word Creole and you hear the word Cajun. Like I say, the Acadian wanted nothing to do with the Creole society when they arrived here, in those 163 people in 1763. They didn't want nothing to do with the Creole society. So that then, of course, you know, things change as time goes on. Now, before we pass up, look on the left-hand side. That's the Agriculture Research Center. That's where permanent pressed fabric was discovered many years ago. Wrinkle-free cotton, homogenized peanut butter, even frozen orange juice concentrate. A lot of domestic things. Back in those days, you know, it wasn't so technical like it is. Everything's so technology thing today, you know, so tech. But back then, the workers were given the job to, hey, help simplify domestic living. So they came up with a bunch of stuff like permanent pressed fabric. Here on the right is the Greek Hellenic Cultural Center. Some say it might be one of the oldest Greek Orthodox churches in America. Dates back to 1863. They have their annual Greek festival right here along St. John Bayou. Memorial Day weekend. Everything's Greek. The music, the food, the wines, the cheeses, the pastries, all the desserts. Yep. The neighborhood to the right is called Lake Terrace. Neighborhood to the left is called Lake Vista. This area more or less developed after World War II ended in 1945. Lake Vista, that means Lake View. We'll make a left-hand turn here on Robert E. Lee Boulevard.
Left-hand turn.
All right, and away we go. Boy, it's been raining a lot these last few days, and then we had Hurricane Isaac 3 weeks ago. I think they're trying to wash us away. Sometimes it feels that way. Then the sun comes out and the birds start to chirp, and life goes on. But these are nice homes. I'm probably in the 600,000 range. Lake Vista. Here's the research center on the left. This area pretty much was developed by the U.S. military just before and during World War II. Used to be an Air Force landing strip, Navy hospital, Army hospital, a lot of military installations that were all torn down after World War II ended in 1945. So the military really, this was a swamp up until then. You know, from 1718 until 1930, this would have been all swamp. Then the military came in and developed the swamp. This is the 18-hole golf course on the left. This is still City Park on the left. There's also an equestrian center where the New Orleans Police Department train on horseback. And they have, of course, stables to board horses over here to the left. Okay, now what I want to do is show you an outflow drainage canal. Well, let me back up, a little history so before we get there. In 1913, so it took almost 200 years, from 1718 to 1913, for someone to figure out how to drain out this swamp. It was Albert Baldwin Wood. In 1913, he invented what's called the wood screw pumping station. And vertically, it was designed to lift water up out of the swamp and relocate it, like in the lake. And then, of course, certainly the swamp eventually dried out and we could cut down trees and populate. So 1913, well, we have 22 of those types of pumps. One's the largest in the world. We also have 80 other electric pumps. So now in the greater metropolitan New Orleans area, we have over 100 pumping stations that when the rain comes down, we pump water off the streets. The water goes into our outflow drainage canals into our lake. And that's why this is called a drainage canal. But one thing I want to show you, if you look to the left, notice that water is sea level. Okay, now look at your homes to the left that are below sea level. On the left. See there? It's that's about the best place to show people, because we do tell people, yeah, there are some neighborhoods that are below sea level, but sometimes it's hard for you to imagine. And by looking at the water there and then looking at the homes, you can see the water is much higher than these homes. So even during Hurricane Katrina 7 years ago, this neighborhood had about 8 feet of water, some of the worst flooding in our city's history. But 85% of this neighborhood has rebuilt. It's called Lakeview. The homes on the right are higher elevation, called Lake Shore. This is Robert E. Lee Boulevard. Lakeview has always been a desirable place to live. We're going to go up and show you the lake in about 5 minutes.
This is a canal. I saw one foundation that was just, they removed it.
This is Canal Street. If you made a right-hand turn, that would take you up to the lake. But we're going a different way because I want to show you something else. But if you made a left-hand turn about 7 miles to the left, that would take you back down to the Mississippi River. This is the Lakeshore neighborhood on the right. Let me show you Mount Carmel Academy. Dates back to 1833. All the young girls are uniformed. It's 8th grade through 12th. But the building constructed 1896. But the school itself, 1833. Now, some people say they call it Mount Carmel Academy. Others say Mount Carmel Convent. It's the same place. Right here on the left. Look at the front lawns now. See if people started getting more front lawns, you know, and bigger lots, you know, and let's go up and see the lake now. What you're going to view is a lake. It's named after the French Marine Minister of Affairs that helped fund Bienville and Iberville's expedition in 1699 as they came from Canada. And it's a natural lake. The average depth is about 16 feet. They call the water brackish, a mixture of salt water and fresh water. And it is used for sailing, boating, windsurfing, swimming. If you don't mind the loggerhead snapping turtles. That's one little setback. Loggerhead snapping turtles. But if you fish, they pull out 4 types of shrimp: large brown shrimp, trout, catfish, bass, flounder, redfish, blue crab. I've heard stories that they have maybe 100 types of fish in this lake. It amazes me. But again, the water is called brackish, a mixture of salt water and fresh water. Maybe that's why. I never hear about any alligator. Never hear about any like bull shark, nothing like that in the lake. Never hear stories from fishermen, not in the newspaper or the Channel 6 News and all that. But here's the levee on the right, built in the 1930s by the Army Corps of Engineers, all around the diameter of the city because we're surrounded by water. And we also have a levee on both sides of the river. Levee comes from a French word that means the same thing, which is to contain and control water. And then we're going to come in, make a U-turn, and come back out this way. Now, see all the sand in the parking lot next to the curb? See, that shows you it doesn't take much wind to cause this lake to come up on this road and on top of the parking area. It doesn't take doesn't need a hurricane, just strong current, strong winds, because it's such a shallow lake. That's evidence, all this sand along the curve. That's why the levee's there. But shoot, that levee wasn't there in the 17 and 1800s. It was built in 1930. Now this, across the lake, you'll see a bridge called the Causeway. When I make this U-turn, there's actually two that runs parallel side by side. And the first was built 55 years